Yeah, how are you?
You did a really job on the green.
That was good. And no minutes for you today, so that's. Yeah,
Really?
yes.
I thought it was
That was a difficult meeting, you know, so.
Quem é que não confia graça? Na verdade, vocês também sim da lens, mas eu acho que o argumento.
Okay. We're set, Brendan?
Yep, you're now set.
Great, all right. Welcome, everybody, to the January 22nd, 2024 meeting of the Land Use and Waterfront Committee meeting for CB6. My name is Majid Abdul-Samad. I am the chair of the committee. Tonight, we're joined by Assistant District Manager Brendan Burke. This meeting is called to order at 6:36. Apologies for the delay. As a reminder, New York State law requires that all committee board members who are not able to attend the meeting in person to have their cameras on and their first and last name displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the meeting is adjourned. Members of the public who are attending virtually, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. Members of the public who are here in person, you can raise any questions that you have by raising your hand. If time allows, following committee discussion, we'll field questions from the public. Gabe will be helping taking meeting minutes today. With that, Brendan will conduct roll call.
Okay. Committee members, I will call your name. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce that there is quorum. Majid Abdul-Samad.
Present.
Victoria Benatar.
Present.
Jim Collins.
Present virtually.
Sandy McKee.
Present, but I'm not.
As of this meeting.
Okay,
I'm present, I'm happy to count a quorum, but
We'll take the quorum, so.
yeah.
She's ex officio.
Yeah.
Rich Mintz.
Present.
Larry Shire.
Present.
Sandra Sherrod. Sandra. Lenny Simon. Okay, I did see Letty earlier, so I'll count you as present. Susan Steinberg.
Present.
Mark Thompson.
Present, and I can see Letty trying to turn her microphone on, but not being able to do it.
Yeah, I'm counting Letty as present.
Okay.
I'm here.
There you go, yay.
You can see me and hear me, and now I'll shut up.
Yep, you're counted as present.
And present.
And Gabe Terzo.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen in front of you. I propose an amendment to today's agenda so that items 1 and 2 are switched. We'll start with the Spark presentation, then the Innovation East. So committee members, unless there are any objections, we will adopt the agenda as is.
Sure.
All right, seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted as amended. All right, next, the meeting minutes from December 19th meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there are no objections, we will adopt the meeting minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adoption of meetings, please raise your hand. Victoria's happiness, no objections.
I was so happy.
Meeting minutes of December 19 are adopted and they will be soon available on the CB6 website. So quick ground rules. In order to conduct an official meeting, observing the following: no one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members who are here in person, if you have a question about the committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and I'll identify you to speak. Committee members unable to attend in person, if you have a question, please raise your hand through Zoom and I'll identify you. All committee members, it is extremely important that only one person speaks at a time so the public watching at home can understand what is being said. Lastly, chat function is for committee members present via Zoom, should not be used for committee business or questions on the agenda. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you're having or to state in writing information like email addresses that have already been stated for the record and shown on screen. All right, with that, jumping to our first agenda item, and that is a presentation by the New York City Economic Development Corporation regarding the scoping of the Spark Kips Bay project. We have speaker present in person.
Great, can everybody hear me? My name is Nate Gray. I'm a vice president of the Neighborhood Strategies Department for the New York City Economic Development Corporation. We'll go over three things. First, we'll talk about sort of the general framing about this Science Park and Research Center Kips Bay project. My colleague Rachel Arrington is going to then go over more of the site planning and urban design considerations of that project. We'll finish up by talking about the timeline and the next steps, and then we'll be followed by the innovation. I can go through the slide if you want.
Sure, yeah, this clicker.
And folks online, let us know if you're having difficulty hearing what's being said here.
So, we say this is a first of its kind job and education hub for health, learning, workforce development, wellness, and training. And we're really proud of that. We're proud of we say when the mayor and the governor released it, we talked about $42 billion in economic activity, 3,000 permanent jobs, 12,000 union construction jobs. Those numbers are all sort of in a real high level, but we're really proud of this part on the bottom here with the agencies that we're working with, because this is the first of its kind of having all of these public agencies that are providing public benefits on one block. And that's really important for us to be able to provide space for institutions, city institutions doing really important work. So working with the City University of New York, there'll be new facilities for them, new facilities for New York City Health and Hospitals, for city public schools, for the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. All of them would be housed at Science Park and Research Center Kips Bay. And so that partnership, and that is all that's behind all of that economic activity and all of those jobs, as well as all the people who will touch this facility. So those public benefits are really central to this project. As you know, and maybe just to assume, actually, I want to assume that you know, this is the Hunter College Brookdale campus that will be redeveloped. It's founded on First Avenue, the FDR Drive, East 25th Street, and the former East 26th Street. So that full block site, which is the home to the Hunter College School of Nursing, which is really an important part of the city. Kips Bay and the First Avenue Life Science Corridor are really important to a really important part of our economy. The life science sector employs 20,000 New Yorkers. That number has increased by 40% in the last 5 years. Wages have increased within that field by 20%. And we expect that to double. We expect those numbers to double in the next 10 to 15 years. So it's a growing part of our economy. It's an important part of our economy. And this part of the city is really important. The clustering of life science businesses is really important to its growth because the trading of ideas, being proximate to people who are both inventing and testing them all together in one place, in one neighborhood is really important. Being close to the workforce. We know there's housing here. We know there's a public realm here that's really important to the growth of that. And then being on the same block, we think it makes that even more important. But then also the transformation of the block itself, something that today is walled off from the neighborhood. This project is an opportunity to integrate it into the neighborhood. So Rachel's going to talk about some of the public realm benefits that include widening East 26th Street to make it two-way, making First Avenue and East 25th Street active, public open space, a new ADA accessible bridge across East 25th Street to bring New Yorkers to the waterfront, and then a tie-in to coastal resiliency. Those are all parts of this project that are really important. So just to wrap up before we talk into the specifics, I talked about the jobs. Life sciences, I thought, was like you would have to have a PhD, a lab coat. It's not like that's actually not the case. For every one job that requires an advanced degree, there's 3 jobs that do not. Half the workforce does not have a college degree. So these are jobs that are accessible to New Yorkers, that pay a good wage, that there's career growth. So when we invest in these, what we're able to do is we invest in it and then invest in a workforce that's accessible to many people. And it's the partnerships amongst those groups, city public schools, CUNY, working with H&H, all of those are really important to be able to take, hopefully, the innovation that happens on this campus and bring it out into the community, connect people to jobs on this campus. And that's really important to understand. So moving from the the high level down to the granular of the site planning. This is a shot of the campus itself. You'll see again, First Avenue, East 25th, the former East 26th, and then the FDR Drive. We thought about, when we were thinking about the master planning effort, how do we balance all of these things? Open space, phasing, economic development, so that we're centering small locally owned businesses and jobs for the community. How do we address community concerns, urban design, mobility and access and resiliency? How do we make all of those things work on this block while achieving the ends for all of the users on the block? And the users are, as I talked about, City University, so building new facilities for community degree programs, City Public Schools with a life science, healthcare professions focused high school with connections to CUNY and career prep. New York City Health and Hospitals, their ambulatory care facility, that would actually, we're thinking will reduce wait times by a week. There's a nursing and advanced practice center there, which provides a really unique opportunity for connections between CUNY and City Public School students. New facilities for the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. They have a Hirsch building directly across the former East 26th Street. It's also a facility on First Avenue that would relocate to the campus. Just as a thought experiment, how many medical examiners do you think in the United States are trained at OCME? What percentage?
50.
Shoot, it's 20. 1 out of 5. But that 1 out of 5 are trained at an OCME facility on First Avenue, which I found is pretty fascinating. It speaks to the reach of that facility. And then life science. So portions of this project will include, will be developed by a life science developer for really cutting edge research. And what is important for us also is, as I talked about earlier, the partnerships amongst all of these different public agencies with the life science, so that we're able to connect jobs, innovation that happens in the life science, and connect it out to the community. What's behind the box there talks about community infrastructure, and that's what I talked about a little bit before. The project has what's called Spark Square, and that's a public open space that will be on East 25th Street. Basically, when you're walking down East 25th Street towards the pedestrian bridge, behind the fence right there, that's going to be public open space. A new accessible bridge, ADA accessible bridge, which today is not, tie into coastal resiliency projects, expanded sidewalks, and then activating Spark Square and activating First Avenue and East 25th Street. So that's a little bit about the users. Rachel's going to talk through more of the actual urban design considerations. And then we've also got members of the team from our life sciences, government community relations, and our land use team to answer any questions that you might have about other parts of the project.
Thanks. So shifting into the proposed design, we wanted to first start by taking a step back and highlighting the core goal of the master plan, which is really this question of how to accommodate all these different users on this one site, which, while it is a large site, it is still limited on, so balancing all these different users while also maximizing community serving open space as well. As you can see, fitting all this program onto the one site required us to think about both vertical adjacencies and opportunities for co-location among the users within the campus. Our design reflects extensive engagement with our agency partners to solidify a plan that meets the needs of each campus institution, while also creating a plan that is contextual within the neighborhood, creates new public access, enhances the public realm, and creates new open space. But in addition to thinking about the buildings on the campus, we've also considered how the campus will be knit into the overall neighborhood and the additional benefits it'll provide. So at the left on the screen is the existing conditions on the site today, and on the right is what the campus.
Point of personal privilege.
Go ahead, Jen.
Could we ask the speaker to speak somewhat slowly so that we can, those of us listening virtually can hear a little more closely?
Noted.
The words are running together.
Noted. And Brendan, can you please minimize the box?
And have her speak somewhat slower.
Noted. Thank you.
Yeah, apologies. We'll speak more slowly.
No worries. You don't know what we can hear here.
I'll start from the top on this. On the left on this slide is the conditions of the site today, and on the right is sort of the enhancements that will occur with the new development. So starting with this new publicly accessible open space, the proposed design will open the existing campus up and create new quality space for the campus and the community to use. Moving to the next one, currently this area is characterized by narrow streets and sidewalks. Our plan will widen the sidewalks, will create a cut-through path, and will also have ground floor activation, particularly along First Avenue. Lastly, this is an area that is currently susceptible to flooding. Our project will include a tie-in to the Kips Bay Coastal Resiliency Project, which is protecting Bellevue Hospital to the north, conferring resiliency benefits to both the campus and also the broader neighborhood. So bringing it all together here, this is what it could look like in the future. Again, as Nate showed, if you're familiar with the existing Brookdale campus, you'll notice that the buildings on the site followed the same general layout of what exists today, just with greater optimization of space. And again, with this core principle of making the block more publicly accessible. On the eastern portion of the campus, we have the educational uses with a vertically stacked CUNY campus and an adjacent footprint for the high school that is lower, accommodating needs around student travel time between the classrooms and buildings, or between the floors. On the western portion, we have our life sciences and our public health uses, with 2 life science buildings that have public facing uses in their podium, with health and hospital located along First Avenue, to provide easy connection to the existing Bellevue campus. And the OCME uses are tucked into that mid-block building to provide them more privacy. Co-location of these uses in this way will create programmatic opportunities between them. In addition to the buildings themselves, we're thinking about activation of the ground floor, including a pharmacy, healthy concessions, since we know that there's some limited food and beverage options around here and so on. We're also thinking about opportunities to welcome the public in and create opportunities for them to see the research that's happening here. So research exhibition space, community lab, such like that. And in the middle, you can see Spark Square, which is nearly 3/4 of an acre of new publicly accessible open space. So again, really thinking about the uses on the site, but then also how the site fits into the broader neighborhood. On the following slides, we're going to zoom in and
I just wanted to know, so how many stories the tallest building is?
It's, I'm not sure the story, like how many stories it is. They're roughly, I think it gets you to, before the mechanical bulkhead, roughly 400 feet, and then 420 to the top of the mechanical bulkhead. The floors themselves, I think the floor height is taller than a standard commercial office building. So while you may have certain stories, it isn't analogous to it.
Okay, thank you.
So in these following slides, we're going to zoom in on some of the overarching design principles and highlight how it plays out in the site. So this first one is meant to call out how we're thinking about this ground floor activation of the campus and how we're thinking about creating this really exciting and inviting feel for both the people using the campus on a day-to-day basis and also the broader community around it. Some of the ways that we've thought about how this could be accomplished is again through this community lab demonstration space in that life science building on First Avenue, having other retail amenities available in Spark Square, healthy concessions, pharmacies, and so on. In addition to this ground floor activation within the buildings, we're also proposing to widen the sidewalks to support a more positive and safer pedestrian experience, both within the campus and around the campus. And notably, including a connection to a newly reconstructed 25th Street pedestrian bridge that will be ADA accessible. In addition to the ground floor activation within the buildings, we're thinking about this broader network of open spaces. Again, Spark Kips Bay will contribute meaningfully to the area's open space with Spark Square, which again will be roughly 1/4 of an acre, 3/4 of an acre in size. But we're also thinking about how it can help connect and tie into the other open spaces that exist around the campus. And so thinking about both the open space here and the broader connection of the open spaces, like Oscar Levy Playground and some of the Bellevue related spaces to the north.
I'm sorry to keep asking, but I like it to be slide appropriate. Is there gonna be a shadow on the sobriety garden from the building? Because now it's in full sunlight.
I don't know specifically yet, but as part of the environmental review, there'll be a complete environmental impact statement that will include a shadows analysis that will look at, different time periods in the year and the shadow that's cast, the incremental shadow that's cast on the public open spaces. So unfortunately, I can't answer your question specifically now, because I don't know, but.
Okay, thank you.
Would you prefer to keep questions till the end?
We're happy to do whatever you want.
Actually, in the interest of time, maybe if we put all our questions at the end, let's see how much we hear from the rest of it.
Okay, again, I'm sorry, it's just that it seems slide appropriate.
Forget it.
I won't do it anymore.
No, you can.
This project will also incorporate flood resilience, connecting to the broader Kiss Bay Coastal Resiliency Project, which is protecting Bellevue Hospital to the north, and also thinking about resiliency on the site itself. So again, this includes coordinating with the ongoing projects that are happening along the east side, ensuring those are coordinated. In this next phase of design, it'll include identifying the appropriate design flood elevation, sort of how high things need to be elevated to ensure that in the event of a major coastal storm, water won't overtop whatever sort of flood protection system exists. So again, this is an example of thinking about both resiliency protection on the site itself, but also thinking about how it's embedded within the broader neighborhood and the other initiatives that are ongoing. Frozen. Sorry, just
Let me.
we're pretty close to the end. I'll go through these quickly. This is just speaking to sort of the general layout and some of the rationale behind it. Piece of this is really taking advantage of the unique southern exposure and how to maximize sunlight on open spaces and also sunlight penetration into the office spaces and the classrooms. And one of the other design principles thinking about the layout of the buildings on the site is the cascading massing. So we have our tallest buildings along First Avenue that get shorter as we approach the East River and helping sort of make it contextual in its nature. Lastly, we wanted to highlight some of the circulation improvements that the campus will bring. This, as Nate mentioned, will include widening 26th Street to make it two-way traffic and also help facilitate the loading and access needs of OCME between those two buildings.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Can I ask you to speak
Yeah.
up a little more?
Yeah.
So folks.
Absolutely. And then the other piece to highlight here is this mid-block cut through to help support patient drop off for the H&H facility that'll be on the western portion of the block. Right. And we can go through these really quickly, but we just want to highlight the transformational impact of the project and some before and after pictures. So in this view, you're standing along First Avenue facing north. And this is what it could look like in the future. There's an inviting entryway with double height lobby, transparent uses along First Avenue, really to enhance the pedestrian experience and display the campus activities. So in this view, you're standing on 25th Street, the existing conditions, mid-block, facing into the campus. As you can see, currently it's fenced off and inaccessible. And so again, this is that same view, you're facing north. Just to anchor you within the site plan, on the right, you have this educational hub, you have the CUNY facilities and the high school. And to the left, you can see that OCME life science building. You can see this new atrium stair, which will really welcome folks into the campus. And the pedestrian bridge is sort of just to the right. You can see how that'll land onto the campus, supporting that newly accessible connection over the FDR. And then lastly, in this view, you're standing on the campus, facing the current entrance to the Brookdale building. In this rendering, we're using this to highlight what Spark Square, this new open space, could feel like. We see this as a really exciting opportunity to support the commingling of users, both between the users of the campus and also the broader community. You can see that we have a variety of landscaping, hardscaping opportunities, people sitting, and being able to just support a really broad range of activity. And then lastly, this is just a zoomed out aerial of the view looking at the Spark campus within the context of the overall New York City skyline. And again, you can sort of see that sort of cascading effect of that tapering down towards the East River. And we're really pleased at just sort of the contextual feel of the campus within the New York City skyline. Great.
All right. So I won't belabor going through these, but there's a lot of city actions that are part of this. There's a lot of state actions. Right now we're working to finalize the draft scope of work that will be releasing shortly. And then gonna be working with the planning use application. And you know better than us that this is gonna come to you for a full discussion as part of the ULURP. So it includes the disposition, zoning map amendments, text amendments, and then acquisition, site selection, and then city map change, as well as associated state actions with the financing and the acquisition and construction. So just to wrap up on the timeline, so a couple things in the near term. We're having a public open house on February 7th at MS 47, and that's an opportunity for the public to hear directly from agencies that are part of this process, as part of the project, to hear from us, and answer any questions that they might have about the project, as well as an opportunity to talk about the public space. What would the public like to see within Spark Square on the ground floor, so that we can incorporate that into our thinking as we move forward with the project. The scoping hearing we're expecting to be in early March. So the draft scope would go out in the next few weeks. And then we're working with a community task force that Susan's actually a part of. We're meeting the first time this week. And then we have Sandy's our co-chair, actually. So we're meeting for the first time on Wednesday, and that's gonna be meeting every other month. So, and then we're starting a workforce development task force, and that's intended to get people who are in these industries to help us understand how to get people into these jobs. And they're gonna be meeting. And then we go into ULURP. Later on is the groundbreaking that's associated with the project, and then going into construction. So that's it. We're happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. So we can start with committee questions, then public questions. Any, go ahead.
I'm full of questions, I'm sorry. So I think I brought up at some point the fact that you're gonna have this beautiful Spark Park.
Yeah.
And this area is, or maybe a little south of Spark, is becoming known for encampments and illegal vendors, and I think the public safety aspect is gonna be an important consideration.
Yeah, I would have to say we completely agree, and I think like what we're trying to do is be able to have an active ground floor that has people that are like the users there 24/7, and then have a maintenance partner that's gonna be part of the project, that's responsible, part of the life science project, supposed to be responsible for maintaining, and it's in their interest to be able to maintain it in a way that allows it to be used by everybody safely. So it's definitely, we hear you 100%. And we don't have an answer right now, but we share it.
I would also add to that, Gigi from Government and Community Relations, that it's something we've raised with CUNY. And CUNY does, throughout their campuses, throughout the city, tailors their security plans for their different campuses, right? So, understanding that they will have students, you know, from early morning to possibly evening, that, you know, they also understand that they will have to have a tailored security plan for this area. And, you know, if you just think about their other campuses that are also in a variety of different parts of just, if you think about Manhattan with Baruch and Hunter and then BMCC, right? Those also have a lot of public open spaces, lots of pedestrian traffic, so they have a lot of experience dealing with, similar setups. So that is something they are aware as well, and understand that is a priority for the residents and the community.
Sandy, then Mark.
We heard from Harvey Epstein had a town hall. And one of the things that seemed really important was to try and include dormitories again for CUNY. So we wondered, the 24/7, and that would be a great way to make it a 24/7 campus if there was housing as part of it. And we're wondering how that might be incorporated.
And where?
And I mean, it would seem it would be on the First Avenue side, probably, those taller buildings. Zoning now allows us to have commercial and and the city of Yes is going to allow us to have commercial and residential on the same floor.
On the Hunter piece, Hunter, as we mentioned at the town hall, that every student who needs a dorm would have a dorm. So I think that's one answer to that. I know it's unsatisfactory. I think at this point, the program that we have is one that we think that is able to achieve those ends of like investing in the life science industry, investing in healthcare, investing in a way that we support the growth of those. And so I would say like, I think that's really that's where we are with that right now. I don't know, PG, is that anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, so I would say certainly that dormitories are not part of the plan as we're presenting it to you. I think if that continues to be a priority, I would suggest that, that be memorialized in your positions. Harvey has certainly expressed that. And so, I don't know if we're too far along to have that conversation, but I can say that we are working with HPD and DCP to look at whether there are other sites in and around the district, including Councilmember Rivera's part of, that also covers part of your community board, to look at any possible sites that may be able to be good candidates for housing. And so that's what we've committed to do.
I mean, if you find
Thus far.
good candidates for housing, we'd definitely like them to become housing. And maybe not just for the dormitories, but for the rest of the community.
Right.
I have a whole series of questions, but
Actually, can I follow up on that? How developed would you say this plan is percentage wise? Is this like a 95% and you're getting thumbs up from us? In terms of like even the scoping of it. So in other words, are you too far down the process for housing to even be considered? Or is this something you would even look at? Is this like completely?
Well, scoping gives you the opportunity to talk, you this, right, as well as I do, it gives you the opportunity to provide those comments, and that's like, I would say a great first step, and then there's through the ULURP application. But in terms of the master planning, this is the culmination of the master planning effort and balancing all of those different needs while still getting at the objectives that we talked about.
Got it. Okay, I'm just gonna go in the order that I saw. So go ahead, Mark, Gabe.
Great, thanks, Abdul. Just had two questions, actually. Gigi, you pretty much answered the first one, but it was just the question about the open spaces and making sure that the community is able to use those more than the schools, as well as the sobriety garden, just to make sure that they sort of aren't, I don't want to say overrun, but that during the daytime when the students are all there, that those remain to be primarily for the community and the public rather than as a playground or a kind of a school quad. But you've already got that covered, so thank you. Second question was, and I probably missed this earlier, in the HHC portion of the building on First Avenue, what are the lower floors actually used for?
The H&H building on First Avenue would be a combination of uses. There would be an ambulatory care facility there. There would be the nursing simulation center. I don't know right off the top of my head, but it would be Combination of things, with the ambulance, are taking up the majority of that space.
So pretty much focused on public coming and going.
Yep,
Okay, cool. Thank you.
sure.
I guess two quick questions. One, is there, any chance to make that bridge bikeable? I understand this is a sort of a once in a lifetime chance to do that.
Yeah.
It contains significant capital costs to do that, and we understand, but we would love to see it if possible. The other thing is widening 26th Street. Obviously the zeitgeist is shifting towards narrower roads. We don't really want to widen any streets unless there's a very compelling reason. And I'm not sure the burden has been met here for a compelling reason to widen the 26th Street.
Was it just widening?
It's to be able to, it's the widening the width of the road, and then the sidewalk becomes wider as well, and then you can get traffic that will go into the OCME. So rather than going up and then having to loop all the way back down in a one-way loop, you could have to go up First Avenue, make a right-hand turn, and come into loading along the backs of those buildings, and then take all of what's on the street and put it into the base of the building. Get that right, Rachel?
Do you mind going back to one of the
Sure.
the slides so we can just follow through?
Yeah, sorry, that was quick. Yeah. Keep going.
Emily, you know when to stop.
Yeah, keep going. That one's probably, forward, yeah, one more. So the way it works now is you would go up First Avenue and then you would make a right-hand turn, I believe, at like 35th and 36th. And then go through a one-way loop and come back down. And then go back onto First Avenue. So rather than sending all of that traffic that would be going to the backside of the building north, there'll be a right-hand turn into the ground floor of those buildings.
So 26th Street is the only one that's being widened.
Like to amplify some of the points that have been raised earlier. Among them is the housing. And you mentioned that this is going to be essentially a 24/7 campus. You can see that with the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, and I think that with the housing for students having been mentioned before, we also have an opportunity to provide subsidized housing for researchers who aren't necessarily paid well enough to find housing nearby. And they're being able to access their experiments on an as-needed basis would be highly desirable. In addition to those aspects, you might want to consider having some place for recreation, some place for dining. These were not mentioned, but it would seem that with so many people here, this is something that ought to have provisioning for.
Okay.
Now, regarding the vehicles and how they access this for service and for being dropped off, really we need to consider how we can keep all of that activity out of sight. And where you have that cut through, perhaps it can be roofed over and the garden be above, so that people in the buildings above would see the garden and not see the entryway. As far as the resiliency goes, it's unclear whether you intend for East 25th Street to become a canal, because there isn't any tie into the flood wall at the VA as you described it so far. Is this going to be an island surrounded by a wall, or will there be a tie-in to effectively protect 25th Street from getting flooded down by the FDR Drive? And that's about it. Thank you.
We could take an answer on the last one, and then I can jump in after that.
what I'll say for the flood wall is that this is something that, again, we're coordinating with the broader resiliency planning process that's happening because that protection providing for Bellevue's critical hospital facility is a higher design flood elevation to protect that facility. So when we think about incorporating resiliency on our project, because it'll tie in, we want to make sure that our design flood elevation matches what they're doing there. So there's not a scenario where there are different levels, so flooding water comes in and overtops our version of it or our portion of it. So as far as the tie-in though to the south, we're looking at opportunities to connect to the VA flood wall, looking at the elevation of that wall relative to what is happening to the north for Bellevue as well. And thinking about how as you move further west, the grade increases. And so it's all part of the next design stage and thinking about how it's working again, both as providing protection to the campus, but also knowing this is part of a system that's not just protecting assets, but it's providing protection to the broader neighborhood. So all this is saying,
Similarly, you're going to protect the closed 26th Street and the garage that goes underneath.
That would be
On
part of the
Bellevue
future design
campus.
of that, of the tie-in for the kids' very also related. Yeah,
Okay.
and then the middle part, when you were talking about the active uses and we're gonna have a station at the open house specifically about that. What would you like to see at the, let's say, planner speak, the ground plan? What do you want to see?
Like to see people there all the time.
Yeah, totally. So I would say come to that, like, we want that level of enthusiasm at the open, so want to get your feedback. I'd encourage you to come. Thank you.
Right, Victoria, then Letty.
Yeah, I want to second the comment of Sandy and Majed about housing. I think it's very important to have a 24-hour and also for security and for safety, to have housing as part of the square footage. As a matter of fact, a project of this size and importance should be created as a community. So I think housing would strengthen that sense of community, having people living there. And you take care of your property when you live. So I think it's an important, and I second the motion.
Victoria, and so just to be clear, do you want the housing to be related to the activities on the campus?
I think that would be appropriate in my opinion, but I don't know how far in the project it is, but but if it's possible, I think it would be, ideal for the community and for the.
Right. Go ahead, Jim, then Letty.
I just wanted to ask or state for the record our concern that the space for the community board office and meeting space be considered. And I just want to take the opportunity to put that back on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how this will impact the 8th Battalion Ambulance Corps on 26th Street and whether or not they've been included in any of your planning. Are they going to be able to remain in that space given the additional traffic that will be moving in this location, or are they going to have to relocate? And if so, what effect that will have on response times, etc.
They won't have to be relocated, and we're actually, coincidentally, we're meeting with them shortly to talk through these plans before we get too much farther along. There will certainly be coordination as part of the environmental review, but we want to do that ahead of that.
Okay. And the second question I had is with respect to the ADA compliant walk space. Is that to be covered? Is that a covered workspace or walk space, meaning that it will have a roof, or will it be open to the elements?
I didn't hear what you were saying. As a pedestrian room. I don't expect it to, but we haven't gone into a final design for it. Right now, we're just at a conceptual level of design. So I don't know. I don't expect it would be though. And we would be coordinating on that design with the Department of Transportation. So we would build it probably to the standard that they have, and I'm not sure if it specifically calls for covering or not.
I have a few questions, but
Go ahead.
one, We talked also about the connection, or you mentioned that you were improving the intersection at 26th and or 25th and the FDR. I just wondered what that would be, because we've asked for that to be improved for a long time. And DOT said it was state, we wouldn't be able to do that. I'm just wondering what the proposal is.
Sorry, it's for the corner.
I think on one of your previous slides, you mentioned that it was improving that intersection.
The exit ramp.
Yeah, it's been a part of the ongoing conversation, DOT on sort of.
Can you speak up, please?
Sorry, it's been a part of the ongoing conversations with DOT and acknowledging that is a non, like there are challenges with that intersection. I think as far as like the specific pedestrian improvements, that's again part of this next phase that we'll think.
So it is something we've been asking for a long time.
If there are specific improvement requests, like document it and let us know.
Actually,
Yeah, we've heard the same thing about
Yeah.
improving it. There's a mid-block crossing, a mid-block stop sign right by Astor leaving.
That's dangerous.
Is it there now?
Yeah,
Yeah, but people exiting the FDR, you know, coming at speed don't necessarily
Sure.
stop.
Okay.
So if the bridge might have a branch that went across 25th Street.
And I guess, sort of to piggyback on what, Majed said, we're just wondering how much of this is finalized, like the renderings are they conceptual, or you don't have an architect in place?
We do not, no, we do not. So this is at a conceptual level of design. In the fall, we released an RFP for a designer to take this conceptual level farther down to closer to final designs.
And is that for the whole site?
That is for the portion, essentially, can I go up the screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
and feel free to use this clicker.
Okay, here we go.
So it's.
The portion that is part of the design RFP includes Spark Square plus the city buildings here. We'd work with a future RFP for the life science buildings.
And so, and I'm not sure everybody, but it is actually two phases, right,
That's correct.
to the project.
Yeah, so it's one block, two phases. We would do the first portion, that's the public, the CUNY and the city public schools plus Spark Square.
And the pedestrian bridge.
And the pedestrian bridge, yeah.
The good parts first.
Yeah.
And the it was KBCR flood wall?
Kips Bay Coach.
I'm not sure we've got any information on that.
That's, so part of the Bellevue, I think it was formerly called the Bellevue Coastal Resiliency Project. I think reflecting it kind of as a part of the broader neighborhood resiliency, the rename for it, but that is formerly Bellevue Coastal Resiliency.
Okay, so we better find out more about it, because.
We could send you a contact.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll let you do.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
So actually, the height is taller than Waterside. In your renderings, it's going
I
to be
believe
taller.
the First Avenue property is taller than Waterside, the portion, the CUNY CPS building, or is it roughly at the same height? Am I off on that?
Right, so it cascades, but again, this is conceptual, but I think we are thinking that it might be, I mean, not too much taller, but yes,
In the renderings currently it is.
It is.
in the
Yeah.
renderings, yes.
Yeah, it's taller than Waterside.
And so I guess, I mean, what,
How high is Waterside, how many floors?
40 floors.
but these are taller because of my requirements.
Right, it's not an apples to apples comparison, because for lab science space, it is usually like 10 feet or more, just because of the way some labs are designed and ventilation and so on and so forth. So it's not when you ask how many floors, like we want to be fully transparent, right? Because it's not, if we said it was 30 floors, it might still be over 400 feet, right? So that's why we want to make the distinction.
But the design is intended to go down so that the eastern part of the site, you're matching.
So that was very helpful to describe the height of Waterside, which you can visually compare it to.
Sure. Again, height is part of the negotiation process.
I also wondered about the level of the plaza, or or the square, Spark Square versus the street, it is higher.
Yeah, that's related, and again, I think this will all be sort of related to the resiliency considerations and what those elevations are, in addition to the broader network of this neighborhood coastal resiliency project, or site-specific resiliency incorporation, that have to do with elevating the campus. So it will be at a higher grade, but again, those details of the grade, it's all part of the sort of like larger formula of the resiliency aspect.
The campus was actually waterfront before Waterside was built. There's actually docks there, and then as the city grew, they went out. So I think one of the earlier images showed the tide line. You're basically coming in mid-block. So it's sort of interesting. There's an interesting history there that relates to that design flood elevation. But yeah, the bottom image there. So we're elevating, so you bring it out of the 100-year, and then also address some of the 500-year flood.
And we did a tour, some of the people here were able to go to the sobriety garden, and it's at a lower level, I believe, and also there's a garage ramp. It's a very complicated access, so I think, yeah, we really like to understand how it's going to tie in with Spark, and so it can become part of the continuous system.
Yeah, yeah, we'd be happy to get, as we get farther along, to talk to you more about that.
Great. Unless, go ahead, Susan.
I'm not sure I understand the Bellevue, the health and hospitals. There's gonna be a new port cochere and entry for Bellevue, or I'm not sure I
Behind
understand
the
what
life science building, there's a port share that's a pickup and drop off First Avenue.
existing or proposed.
Proposed
So
on
what's
our
gonna
side.
happen to the existing one? Anything? It's gonna stay there?
On the Brookdale site?
No, it's just north.
Oh, on the Bellevue Hospital itself.
Yeah.
Oh, that I'm not sure.
Yeah, so, so the idea is that will stay for traffic for normal, if you take a lift or if you drive, that will stay. The idea is that portico will be exclusively or I shouldn't say exclusively, primarily for, the accessoride and the vehicles that come in that are like assisting patients that need a special vehicle, paratransit, et cetera, so that they have a designated parking, a drop off and pickup spot.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Is this parking by the sobriety garden is going to stay, or that's going
On the
to?
north side of East 26th Street, the stackers.
Right.
Yeah, that's not part of our project. That's not.
Because that would be a very nice site for housing.
Yeah,
By the way.
yeah, that's not part of our project.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Just a couple of basic questions. I'm new, so sorry about if this sounds too basic, but are there any dorms in any of those buildings that you're
Yeah.
doing right now? How many? Or would you have an approximate idea? I'm not asking for.
700.
So let me see if I understand this correctly, okay? And again, I apologize, I'm new. The basic idea or the basic plan is to take away 700 dorms or housing units and not have any replacement for those.
On the campus, the students who are, community students who want housing are our community says that they'll get housing. Where that will be, I don't know, and that's something that's still to be determined.
So,
But to say yes, your point is correct. There's housing there today. In the future, there will not be housing on the campus. But students who would like housing will be housed by community in other parts of their system.
so while we are already struggling with this housing crisis, which the Manhattan Borough President and a lot of other electeds have brought up.
Yep.
The plan is to not replace them, but just figure out some other space, therefore making the housing situation worse.
So I would say for community students, there will be housing. It won't be on this end, right? That's the plan as it stands today. And it's not as if they will not have a dorm. They will be provided a dorm in another location, and that's something that's still being determined where that's gonna be. And then the other parts of so yes, I think that's partially true. But then on the other side of that coin is all the other investments in the space. And that's what we're advancing with this project. And we need to to say it again, is to be able to bring all of those investments in life science and healthcare to the campus, but the trade-off is the CUNY dorms on the site, but they would still have dorms. Just not.
Just to interject very quickly, if there's a specific answer to a question that is relevant to another slide, please,
Sure.
move the slides. That way people at home can follow more easily. Thank you.
Okay, in the interest of time, I'm gonna pass it to two folks online. There are like some 20 questions online. Some of those have already been answered. Others, I encourage you to show up on February 7th, we said.
Yeah, February
To
7th.
learn a lot more and ask all these.
Yeah, this whole team that's here today, including the innovation needs team, will be at the open house on the 7th, as well as representatives from the specific agencies that we're partnering with. So it's an opportunity to get really, like, if you want to get really into the details, there'll be people there to answer basically any questions that you have.
And that's happening where?
MS 47, which I believe is on 40, and it's on 43rd
Yeah, it's
Street.
technically PS 347. We'll send out invites to the community board as co-sponsoring the event, and we'll make sure you all have flyers.
And there will
what
be
is the
food.
address? Yeah, I can give it to you right now.
Great.
So
So the folks online, we will mention where this is. Brendan, can we promote Barbara and Stacy, these speakers? They have their hands raised.
I would also just want to add that per Sandy's request, we will also be back at your February land use committee meeting to answer any questions that you may have, given that there is a task force meeting and an open house. And as this information is getting processed and more questions are asked, we want to be available to continue having this dialogue with you. So you will not have a lack of opportunity to ask us more and more questions.
Much appreciated.
and the address is 225 East 23rd, which is between 2nd and 3rd.
Great, 225 East 23rd. Yeah.
And the open house will be at Brookdale.
Right?
No.
No, the open house is at PS 347.
Right
which is
after you
the,
use the address I give you to go. You know, did you script that any worse?
Strike the last one.
Yeah, done,
Right.
right.
Great. All right, Barbara, go ahead.
I was wondering who is paying for this, the city, state, or the federal government?
It's a combination of the city and the state.
The city and the state. And another question is, I was under the understanding that CUNY was a city school, that you could only go there if you live in New York City. So if that's the case, why do we need housing for those students?
So that is not the case. CUNY, funding for CUNY, actually comes through, the state, which is why they are a key partner here. You can apply to go to CUNY, and be a resident anywhere. I'm sorry, you can be a resident from anywhere and apply and enroll in a CUNY institution.
Okay, how many buildings will be torn down and what are they now?
One
There's,
down, only the existing Brookdale campus building as you see it now.
The existing what? I didn't hear you.
The existing Brookdale campus building,
Uh-huh.
so there's three
And
buildings.
where is that located? I'm very confused about this because I thought you said it was from 23rd Street to 25th Street. Now it seems like it's 25th Street and to 26th Street, and I can't see where you're gonna put all those buildings.
So can I,
It's the Brookdale campus from 25th Street on the south to the former East 26th Street on the north, which on the screen here is 3 buildings. So it doesn't include to the south the VA hospital.
It doesn't include the VA hospital, but
No,
does it include the hospital where children that need special care or special education go? On the corner of 23rd Street and First Avenue on the
No.
east side?
No,
Doesn't include that either. That's good.
and so,
Thank you very much.
right, thank you, Barbara. In the interest of time, I'm actually gonna wrap this up because we have other presentations. Again, February 7th, public forum, 222nd East 25th. And this is recorded, so you can always rewatch it for any details you missed.
I'm sorry, it's 225 East 23rd.
225 East 23rd.
At what time?
6:30 to 8:30.
Great. I'm not gonna say another word. on
And,
this.
and we'll make sure you all get a flyer and everyone knows.
You and I should just.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm pretty sure we're asking you to co-sponsor, so we'll get the address.
Right.
we'll get it.
And I just want to confirm that, I mean, we're having this discussion. Is there any written documentation you would like from the board as follow-up from this presentation?
So that is at the discretion of the board. As I said, as they said before, the sort of first official step that we have to take as part of our land use process is to have a scoping hearing. The scoping hearings, after COVID have become, virtual, and anyone, has an opportunity to call in and testify, as well as provide written testimony for the record. If the board, would like to document their initial thoughts for the record as part of the public scoping,
We need
the
to.
way to do that would to be have an official position on the record, and someone could call in and read your position for the record. You can after the actual scoping hearing itself, there is a period, I think, of 30 days. How many days is it? Do you remember? 10 or 15. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
10 or 15.
I don't think it's 30 days, but.
10 or 15 days where you can all submit in writing, and that will also be it will be documented as for the record. So those are the opportunities for the board to have your position memorialized.
And one of the things that came up at Barbie's town hall was, how people can get their questions about the project. That's the email that goes to our project team, and then a QR code that'll take you to the project website. So if anybody online or anybody on the board, if you want to give this information out, that's how they can reach us about any questions.
And just to clarify, in terms of timing, for if we want to document something in writing and have it go before full board, we would need to do that this evening, prepare our comments this evening. Our next board meeting is February 14th. And we at that point, we will have had several meetings, but we won't have met as a committee.
So since as a board, we speak in resolutions, is there a motion to collect the comments that the committee and the public has given into a resolution?
I so move.
I second.
All right, perfect. Great, thank you. So we will write the resolution, have everybody vote. Do we need to vote on it now? Because it is not in favor or in opposition.
We just need to vote that we're going to do the.
Then we're gonna do a resolution. Got it. All right. Brendan. Can you please do that?
Yep. So when I call your name, please say whether you are in favor of that or opposed to that. Majid Al-Samad,
In favor?
Victoria Benatar,
In favor?
Jim Collins. Jim Collins,
You're on mute, Jim.
I'll circle back to Jim in a moment. Richmond,
Sorry, I had moved on to something else to send to Sandy. Yes, I'm in favor.
Richmond.
Rich is not on.
Yvonne, okay. Larry Shire,
In favor.
Letty Simon,
In favor,
Susan Steinberg,
In favor.
Mark Thompson,
In favor?
and Gabe Terzo.
In favor.
Okay. All 8 committee members are in favor of drafting a resolution,
All right. Do we have volunteers to write the resolution?
collecting comments.
I'm happy to help. All right, Gabe and I will write the resolution.
And just to be clear, this is a resolution that will be before February's full board or February's land use.
February's full board. All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, the team that presented, much appreciated.
Thank you. I'll ask people to come.
Thank you.
Yes, can we ask you to switch? All right, the next team we have, for the 40 folks online, stick around. We have a presentation on the proposed Innovation East Life Sciences project at 455 First Avenue.
Have a clicker here.
We got some.
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right, in the interest of time, we'll jump right in. Please introduce yourself and go ahead with your slides.
Great, excited to be here tonight. Thanks very much. My name is Ben Backash. I'm the Senior Vice President from Taconic Partners, joined by of A&N Architects, Alan Lehman and Zach Bernstein from Fried Frank, our Land Use Council, among others on the team. I'll start by just introducing the project partners of Innovation East, our proposed life science building on First Avenue. Of course, the New York City Economic Development Corporation. Innovation East is part of EDC's broader life science initiative in New York City. Taconic Partners and Elevate Research Properties, experienced developers of commercial life science space in New York. Divco West are co-developers, developers of leading life science ecosystems nationally, including here in New York, as well as the NYU Grossman School of Medicine, our anchor tenant in the building. So the Economic Development Corporation issued a request for expressions of interest and selected this group to develop a world-class commercial life science facility on the site of the current public health lab at the corner of First Avenue and 26th Street. Some background on the team that was selected. On the top row, you see some of Taconic and Elevate's projects here in New York. From left to right, first West End Labs, which is a life science property currently in lease up. The Hudson Research Center, which is an operating commercial life science building home to the New York Stem Cell Foundation, RPI, among others. And then on the right is Iron Horse Labs, a commercial life science building we are developing on the Upper East Side. On the bottom row, we have some of Divco West's projects in Boston and in New York, on Water Street, on Hudson Street, and on Jacob Street, respectively. So this development team is at the forefront of innovative design for commercial life science space. And is excited to bring that expertise to this project. So Innovation East, which you see here outlined in black, will advance the city's goal to grow the New York City life science sector by providing state-of-the-art commercial life science space. It will replace the outmoded public health lab, which built in 1964, is out of date for commercial modern life science use. Innovation East will deliver commercial life science space for companies of varying size and varying stages of development, as well as space for the NYU Grossman School of Medicine's entrepreneurial research labs, while fostering job training and creation, providing job opportunities for a range of education and skills. So to give you a sense of project timeline, the development of Innovation East continues the evolution of the First Avenue Health and Sciences corridor in keeping with its history and also the community board's plan from the early 2000s. We are in the core of our outreach phase, targeting to enter ULURP with certification in the spring. The existing public health lab would relocate to a purpose-built facility in Harlem in 2026, at which point that building would be demolished, and then the new building would be built. So completion for Innovation East would be approximately 2030. Innovation East will partner with local K-12 schools, colleges, and nonprofits to connect students and local residents with the life science community, promoting awareness of life science as a career path, and contributing significantly to the life science workforce pipeline. Our intent is to identify impactful opportunities to bring local students and residents into the building and interact with the life science ecosystem. And it's through these partnerships that we envision the building becoming an integral part of the neighborhood, as well as the First Avenue corridor. So we're reaching out to our neighbors, to the community, having meetings like this with other stakeholders, in the interest of being a good neighbor, answering questions and providing information on the project. I'll ask Sarko Avenia to talk through some specifics of the building.
Okay, first, I'm gonna just start with a little bit of background on the existing conditions, which I'm sure you're mostly familiar with. So this is the project that is kind of across the intersection diagonally from the Spark campus that we just heard about. So this is at First Avenue and 26th Street. Directly across the street, we have Bellevue Hospital. To the south of the site is space for NYU School of Nursing. We have residential neighbors to the north, including the 344 East 26th Street Nitro residences and the Carmel Place micro units. We also have the 27th Street pedestrian way, which is a designated pedestrian way, not an active vehicular street. And that connects directly to Bellevue South Park, which was recently reopened after renovation. The site itself occupies a pivotal role in the First Avenue Health and Sciences corridor. It's over 40,000 square feet, which is an ideal size for life science floor plates, which is the intended use for this project. A couple of existing conditions photos. So this is the existing 14-story public health lab from First Avenue and 27th Street, which shows some of the extensive scaffolding that's been installed around the site for the better part of the decade. We included an additional photo of the opposite corner on 26th Street. This was taken about 10 years ago, which just shows a little bit more clearly some of the existing conditions, which is characterized by some fairly tall site walls, keeping the building activity kind of away from the pedestrian realm. Further around the site, there's a lot of opacity, a lot of opaque walls bordering the site. And then on 26th Street, there's a significant portion of the site elements and the building footprint, which encroaches over the property line, extending into the public right of way. And that can be seen also hatched in red on the diagram to the right. Some additional existing conditions photos. One thing that we wanted to point out is that there are a lot of different points of vehicular access in the existing site. So on 26th Street, there are two separate points of vehicular access. There's an active loading dock at the corner of 26th and Mount Carmel Place. And there's also a separate vehicular access point farther east, closer to First Avenue. There's also 3 loading bays on Mount Carmel and access to a fenced-in parking area that fronts onto 27th Street. Some of the other photos just show some of the existing conditions and then the, blank facades along 27th Street. We also wanted to look a little bit more carefully at the existing conditions on the 27th Street pedestrian way. You can see the border of our property in red, but because it fronts directly onto that 27th Street pedestrian way, it will have a big impact on the character of that space. So right now, 27th Street is characterized by a large and very active city bike installation on the east side. It's separated by it's separated by a fence, and then on the west side, it's intermittently congested by illegally parked vehicles. There's also a mid-block access point to the NYCHA service yard for access trucks and vehicles. And there is a small retail establishment north of 27th Street, which at least in warmer weather had some cafe tables, which I think showed some of the potential for the space to be activated and restored to pedestrian use. So through this project, it's our intention to restore the pedestrian experience and the safety on 27th Street. The existing scaffolding and the blank facades has created some concerns in the community for safety on 27th Street. We also intend to activate 27th Street with a ground floor retail cafe. So, much needed food and beverage establishment on First Avenue, which will be at the corner of First Avenue and 27th Street, so that it kind of spill out and activate 27th Street. We also intend to work with the city to remove the parking that's illegally there and to explore options for relocating the city bike so that the entire length of 27th Street can be restored to pedestrians and provide some additional much needed public space for the community. That restoration of the public pedestrian experience will connect the residences to the west through Bellevue, South Park to First Avenue, and then the Spark project will further strengthen the connection farther east to the, East River waterfront. To talk a little bit about the building specifics, this will be a purpose-built, state-of-the-art life science facility, which has more specific needs than a typical office or residential building. It will have larger and regularly shaped floor plates, which facilitates laboratory planning. The entire building will be designed on an 11-foot module, which supports flexible and efficient lab planning. There will be additional enhancements to the building systems and more mechanical space, both in the ceiling cavity and in the building itself, which generates taller floor-to-floor heights when you compare it to more conventional office or residential buildings. In addition to the infrastructure and the technical requirements, we're also thinking programmatically about the building and how to develop it as a vertical life science ecosystem. It's really critical to think about, you know, the idea of clustering academic and commercial companies for the synergies that they create with each other. So the building is looking at developing space that will support a multitude of tenant types, including smaller scale spaces that can support, you know, incubator space for startups, as well as larger spaces that support more established and mature research and development companies, as well as the tenant space for the NYU Grossman School of Medicine and their entrepreneurial research labs. And then we're also thinking about how to connect all those different tenants within the building to really foster that sense of community, and that will include the cafe at the ground floor, the food and beverage, but also a footprint for a life science multi-purpose space, which will have, you know, the ability to have programming for conferences and events. So in addition to those requirements, we're thinking about the building from a sustainability, resiliency, and wellness standpoint. We're targeting LEED Gold. The building will include a number of energy efficiency measures, including a fully electric central plant, which will, you know, help New York City's transition from fossil fuels. Oh, those words look very strange. We're also similar to Spark, thinking about flood resiliency. So we've set design flood elevation so that all critical infrastructure will be raised above the design flood elevation and out of the floodplain. A few views of the project itself. So this is an aerial view. Can't really point with this, but the building in brown across First Avenue is the proposed Innovation East. And we're developing the massing of it to incorporate all of those requirements, but also to, you know, respond and fit into the massing and the, you know, architecture of the First Avenue corridor, and to kind of bridge the gap between that and the residential community to the west. Pedestrian view, this would be on 26th Street, so the Spark campus would be to the left. So looking across First Avenue to Innovation East, you can get a sense of the scale of the building and the, you know, the modularity of the facade. We're still in the early design stages, but we're thinking about how much transparency and glazing, and we're balancing, you know, the amount of glass with our energy performance and also with the surrounding community context. We have thought a lot about ground floor planning. So we are prioritizing the ground floor to be transparent and active and accessible. The main building entrance to Innovation East will be mid-block on First Avenue, and that's for the, you know, convenient and direct connection to the centrally located elevator core. But it's flanked to the north by the retail cafe, which has frontage on First Avenue, but also the potential to spill out onto 27th Street. And then it's also flanked by the life science multi-purpose space on the south corner of the project, and that provides space for flexible conference and meeting space. All of those three spaces are connected inside the building, but they also have individual and direct connection to the street frontages, which, you know, helps with activation and access from different areas. We're prioritizing transparency. So even on the north side of the site along 27th Street, we've located an active and transparent bike room for building tenants. And then we've consolidated the loading docks to Mount Carmel Place, which is a kind of low traffic, wide one-way street, which can support that kind of activity with minimal disruption to the surrounding street and biking networks. So a few views of how that ground floor activation and transparency can improve the public realm. and fit into the community context. So this is a view of the cafe corner on 27th Street and the way that it can engage and interact with the 27th Street pedestrian way. Sorry, I went the wrong way. Looking at the opposite corner, this is 26th Street, which shows primarily the life science multipurpose space, and then it also shows the increased depth of the 26th Street sidewalk that gets restored to the public right of way. And we also just have a couple of zoomed in views of that life science multipurpose space, which just shows the scale of some of the transparency that we're talking about and how visible that space will be, especially as we think about seeing into the space, seeing that activation, which is, you know, not what you're seeing and experiencing with the existing buildings today, and the opportunity to, you know, have programming in there that really helps to put science on display through a variety of either functions or displays or. And Ben's going to talk a little bit more about the programming of that space.
Great. So Innovation East will include spaces designed to foster the life sciences community. And some of our other life science properties here in Manhattan, we have a space which is flexible, as is we have at Hudson Research Center, at West End Labs, which promotes networking interaction amongst building tenants. This is critical for the life science field. Folks of varying disciplines get together, they talk about ideas, and this is part of the science process where ideas come to life. In this building at Innovation East, the multipurpose space will be approximately 9,000 square feet. There'll be conferencing space, but also a pre-function split space at the perimeter, which will be highly visible from the public realm and can also serve as an art gallery to show science-inspired art to the community, as well as for the community to see what's happening in the space. And the spaces are overall designed to promote collaboration and connection across different components of the life science ecosystem. Innovation East will stimulate the growth of life science companies and organizations, which together will employ approximately 1,000 individuals ranging in skill and education level. There'll be more technical life science jobs like faculty researchers, postdoctoral fellows, and lab technicians, but then related jobs, business managers, administrative assistants, building service workers. We're exploring partnerships with nonprofits, including the Lower East Side Employment Network, New York Bio, Life Science Cares, Hypothekids, on how local residents can connect with the life sciences and related jobs at Innovation East. We're also committed to active participation in MWBE during construction, as well as EDC's Higher NYC program, both construction and permanent. Innovation East will strive to strengthen the life science workforce pipeline. We'll be participating in the Economic Development Corporation's Life Science Internship Program for New York City students, while also creating programming that fosters connections and opportunity amongst the life sciences sector, as well as the community. So things like life science conferences, lectures, seminars, but also networking and career exposure events for local students, potentially students at Spark or across the street, partnering with local K-12 schools and nonprofits to inspire the next generation of life science graduates.
So we'll talk a little bit about the land use actions that are required. We'll be proposing a zoning map amendment that will change it from an R8 district with the C25 overlay to a C64 district. That's what will allow us to have the commercial use in the building. We are seeking a special permit to modify height and setback regulations, which you can see diagrammatically on the left in the areas that are hatched. This will result in a 10 FAR building, which is approximately 440,000 zoning square feet or 600,000 gross square feet. The proposed maximum envelope height would be 255 feet to the building face, with an additional allowance to 270 feet in the center of the building, which just allows for some flexibility for mechanical bulkheads or screened mechanical.
So overall, Innovation East will provide both significant economic development, but also community benefits. It'll substantially improve the public realm, foster a vibrant life science ecosystem that's interconnected with the surrounding neighborhood, while creating quality jobs for a range of skills. With that, we're happy to take your questions.
Hey, thank you very much. So,
This actually is a question I could have asked the Spark people as well. these R&D labs, are they gonna be studying creepy crawlies, radioactive bats and, you know, flies with rabies or, yeah, I'm just thinking of the lab at Wuhan. I mean, we're not gonna be faced with a disaster or.
Sure, it's a fair question. So labs like this are permitted in almost all commercial districts today, and there's a series of regulations that they're required to abide by. We don't have concerns about anything like that happening. There's actually an entire part of the life science field that doesn't deal with things like that. One of our tenants in another building is, I'll give you an example, developing synthetic palm oil, which will be used in things like soaps or other cosmetics, which is significantly decreasing deforestation in the Amazon. So there's a whole range of uses that could happen in a building like this. There's, you know, artificial intelligence and computational labs that could be there. For anything that was more truly science as we think about it based, there's significant regulations governing.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead, Larry, that's in.
Okay, maybe what you're asking, Susan, is maybe more specifically a BS3, BS4 possible type lab. Is that within the realm of possibility?
I can say, Taconic, I'm not versed in the BS criteria.
Well, I mean, these are labs where basically you're wearing a hazmat suit because you need to protect yourself.
Sure. I don't anticipate that, but it's very early on in the process of planning this building. Whatever regulations would be required of it, we would have to adhere to.
Okay, changing the subject to the built space.
Yeah.
See, this was an R8, which implies residential. Is there any, and it happens to be located across the street from a project that this community board was very involved with developing, and that is the micro units. Do you see any possibility of incorporating some micro units in the footprint of this? You have a cafe like they have. I raised this issue on Spark. You could have people on premises, you know, who are watching over the experiments, and you can give them a place to crash. Necessarily be the full-time residents would be, but might be a way of differentiating your project from others. Looking for any way we can to find places for people to rest their heads and be in this comfortable and safe environment.
Sure, fully appreciated, and you know, there certainly are housing challenges. Our program for the building is based on an agreement we have with the city that is pure to the life science field. But I know certainly Gigi mentioned that the city is looking into other housing opportunities in the district.
Okay, but throw that as a thing that maybe the city could press for.
Larry, just back pass around to see.
Oh, okay, I just have one last question.
Go for it.
And that is, there's a city bike station there. And my observation, my personal use of it is that it's an ideal location. It serves the NYU dental school, serves Bellevue Hospital across the street, just like a city bike station close to Langone is really, really well located and very well used. This one is, I don't think, going to interfere with what you have proposed in terms of the street life, and I hope that you don't ask for it to be moved.
Right.
And a couple of questions. The timing, I'm wondering if the building isn't going to be built until it's quite far along. I'm just wondering why you're coming to the board now.
Sure, so we are pursuing ULURP now, so we're going through targeting a spring of this year certification. and then we'll be going to the ULURP process following. So we want to come to you before we came to you formally following.
And some of the actions that you're looking for, does the existing building comply with current zoning? Do any of the?
Zach, or Ellen, do you guys first?
No, it doesn't. The existing zoning is an R8 district, which doesn't allow the commercial use that's in the public health lab since it was built in 1964.
I also want to point out that the existing building is actually built into the sidewalk on both 26th Street and 27th Street. So when it's taken down, there's going to be a lot of space returned to the public right of way, which is a net benefit.
So how did that happen?
Yeah, right.
No one knows. And just wondering, will you compete with Spark then to be providing on these spaces? Is it the
So-
same type of space?
I don't think we'll be, I mean, in that we're both life sciences, it's very possible that, there'll be similar tendencies. This building is 40% pre-leased, and that the NYU Grossman School of Medicine will be having a significant, presence as an anchor. But I anticipate the timing of the lease up school will be different.
So Spark isn't worried.
I also know that the sit-in, maybe, Miko, you want to speak to this?
Sure.
The New York City cluster is very much undersized relative to others in the.
That's right, that was the point I was going to make. So hi, my name is Nico, I'm the assistant for the city's life sciences team. And so actually, what's exciting about this opportunity that's going on at Innovation East and Spark is that we have a goal of bringing a certain amount of activity to this neighborhood, speaking to the ingredients it already has as a strong life sciences cluster. And I think we believe that both of our projects, when we bring it together, will bring about the right amount of activity to bring like all of those companies and all of that talent into this neighborhood. And I think it's something that compared to other geographies, we just don't have as much holistic stuff. Well, the space and the talent and these two projects will really fulfill that goal that we have in that time, at the same time.
And I guess just, thank you. One of the other things, like the current zoning would force a different massing. It wouldn't be so much of a box. And I'm wondering if that's something the community might appreciate a little bit more.
Yeah, the challenge comes in when you actually try to plan it as a lab, which needs this 11-foot module and having irregularities, which traditional setbacks cause, doesn't make it exactly conducive, but I fully appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of incredible lab buildings in the world, and you have a good architect, so it just seems that we could have a slightly, something that might be a little more friendly to the community.
But
So I have a question. Why is the setback eliminated? This is eliminated, right?
It is, I mean, I think it's been mentioned there, lab buildings do need fairly large footprints that, when you start having the sloping setbacks and you incrementally decrease floor plate size, it doesn't work very well for labs because they are all worked on a module. And that's pretty rigorous. And one of the things that I think is another defining point of this project and many lab projects is that there's just a lot of mechanical equipment at the top of the building that needs to breathe. So there's like a minimum roof footprint that we need to maintain in order to kind of host all of that equipment. And, that drives, as you start to decrease the setbacks as you get to the top of a building, it works quite well in residential. You get to a very small footprint at the top and, there's less mechanical demand, but on a lab building, you really need a broader footprint for some of those mechanicals.
Who's the architect?
Ennead Architects.
Okay, so I am understanding that this, rather than a gentrification of the area, this is a scientification of the area. Is this going to be a common denominator expected to grow in this neighborhood? Are we?
I mean, as you mentioned, it fits in with our 197A plan, which identified this as a hospital area.
Right.
Area.
Just came out with a new word.
Just a couple of things. I'm just a huge fan of building a life sciences corridor here, and I love the attention you're paying to the agglomeration effect. and to the illegal parking bonanza that is Mount Carmel Place. My question is, I do live a stone's throw from there. I know people in my building are gonna be concerned about the demolition process of what is a rather large building. Is there any detail available on that?
It's early on for us to give you any kind of concrete plan about that, but rest assured, as we get closer, we'll be informing neighbors. We're gonna keep in touch. Because we understand the potential for it to be very disruptive and, well, you know, I won't say it won't be disruptive because it is a big undertaking, but we'll try to as, you know, be as neighborly as we can throughout the process.
I have a quick question. If you were to just estimate a number of folks who will be on this property on a daily basis once it's open and full running, what would you put that number at?
So, I don't know. I can't give you a number, I'm sorry.
Ballpark.
Think about it.
You mentioned 1,000 jobs.
Yeah.
Are those like construction or those?
900 to 1,000.
900 to 1,000? Okay,
Yeah.
so,
Ballpark, don't hold me to it.
okay, yeah, I won't hold you that. So between that and what's happening across the street, I think it's worth thinking first the capacity of the cafe that you're
Sure.
proposing. Knowing that area, and I live also close by, well, by definition, we all do. There's a severe shortage of like restaurants, places to sit, not just indoors, what you do with your ground floor, but also outdoors. And being in a place that's pleasant, like looking at the floor plan you had, I think like 50% of it was just walls or darker or even loading. So, yeah, exactly. This is actually helpful to look at. So I know 27th, not a lot of work. There's no business spending a lot of time on there. But once this is open, and again, Spark is open, that's gonna be a lot more active. So, you know, highly encourage you to reconsider the size of the retail cafe, see how much more, like a good amount seems to be mechanical. I'm an architect myself. Just curious, how you can play around with those adjacencies to maximize retail, maximize how much, again, of that just frontage is transparent, lit, even at night, has eyes on the street, especially that dark corner on Mount Carmel, place. Yeah, and just seating around the perimeter as well. Go there.
Building on that, the exterior of the building, look at the rendering, and I'm thinking about the story of the Richards Labs at the University of Pennsylvania, which were designed by Louis Kahn. And they were beautiful buildings, but they were terribly impractical. And the students who had to work in them had to put aluminum foil up in the glass to keep temperature controls. Now, we're many years removed from the 1970s, but I can't really tell from those renderings. What are you thinking about cladding the building in order to maintain the most efficient HVAC system?
Sure, it's early for us to tell you definitively the materials of the building, in that we're at the conceptual phase and we're very much focused on massing, right, for the purposes of zoning. But energy efficiently is definitely top of mind, and maintaining that balance between the opaque and the transparent, for just the reason you said. As we, you know, advance and the design gets more developed, we'll certainly come back and
I'm interested.
Do you mind putting up again your, the zoning actions? So Mount Carmel, the Mount Carmel side is also, you're reducing the setbacks. Is that correct? Like I think First Avenue is on the left and Mount Carmel's on the right?
Opposite. In this
Okay.
section, First Avenue is on the right, Mount Carmel's on the left.
And again, it's a park, there'll be, as part of your review, there'll be shadow studies and.
yes, absolutely. Initial results from the shadow studies show that there's not an adverse impact on the park, but when we come back to you, we'll have the environmental team here with us so they can more technically respond to any questions.
Okay. So any other questions in the room or online?
And is this another case where we need to document our comments now versus, is there a time we will have an opportunity to do that before?
Move that with certification to
Great, thank you.
All right, Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on to our last agenda items for the night. Thank you all for sticking around, and that's an introduction to our CB6 planning fellows for 23-24. Today, we're joined by Missy Quick and Saba Mahmood. Okay, Missy, do you want to go first? Go ahead.
Yeah, but this is for, slide we have up on.
Yes, yeah.
Actually, if you want to come up.
Closer to
Closer
the
to
microphone is here.
Oh, right.
Would you like, I have already. I will. Thank you.
Okay, hello, everybody. So I'm Missy Quick. I'm working with the Fund for the City of New York as a community planning fellow this year, and I believe you had a fellow last year. That's correct. So you're familiar with the program, but for anybody who's not, Fund for the City of New York is a nonprofit that has been running the Community Planning Fellowship Program for over a decade, and it's to partnering with community boards around the city to help them with projects they might not have the bandwidth to do without extra support. And it's pairing graduate students with community boards. And so I'm studying transdisciplinary design at Parsons at the New School. And my area of focus is really in the process behind design decisions and building more opportunity for community engagement around that process. And my background is in user experience design, a lot of facilitation and research. So I'll be working on looking at recently renovated privately owned public spaces or POPs in the district. I know it's come up a lot today of that there's not a lot of open space in the district. So this is really important to think about what open spaces we do have and how well they are serving the community or not serving the community. So I'll be doing a few case studies of a few different sites that have been recently renovated and looking at the reasons why they were renovated. Why did the building owners decide to do that? What was that process like? And then how are these recently renovated sites operating for the community? And are they working better for the community? So that's kind of the scope of the project right now. I've been doing some literature review, research, and I've talked with Majed and Sandy and Rich a little bit about the work and some initial site selection. So I will be looking at 780 3rd Avenue.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Were you able to share your slides with Brendan, or even just if you're online?
Yes, I can. Can I email them to you right now,
Yeah.
Brendan?
And maybe in the meantime, do you want to put that up on the screen, Brendan? The
Yeah, once I get them.
or no, I meant 730.
783rd.
783rd Avenue.
783rd Avenue.
Sure, just a moment.
What's the
So,
Wi-Fi?
Actually, you know what? I just sent it to Brendan.
Thank you.
I just realized he was not copied on your last name. Brendan, you should get an email from me on your.
okay.
On your.
Sounds good. I'll click on that in a moment.
Oh, and I have some pictures of the site.
That's not quite
Slides.
what I.
Actually, if we pull up the deck, if it has photos in it, let's just do that.
Okay, just give me a moment.
Go ahead.
What department are you, Parsons?
Transdisciplinary design.
Teacher person.
Okay.
I'm saying you, I know her the other one.
Yes, it's part of the School of Design Strategies. Which department do you teach at?
Architecture and interiors. That's okay. Very good.
Give me a moment. about to be pulled up on screen for the people at home. There we go.
Thank you. Okay, so this is what I was just talking about a little bit of my background. And then looking at, they can't see the screen from where I'm sitting, but, the highlighting here, just the very small amount of open space that we have in the district, only 3% of open space and outdoor recreation, and of that, only 2% is parks. And so here, what I've been looking into is kind of the history of the privately owned public spaces program. It was started in 1961 to introduce more open spaces in Midtown, since it was being heavily built up at the time, a lot of skyscrapers. But what's important to note, and you'll see here in this graph, it's the completion dates of the construction of all the POPs, which data has been collected from the open data available from the Department of City Planning. And so they've been grouped into key dates of when the zoning regulations have changed around this program. So from the start of the program in 1961 to 1975, there were no amenities required at these sites. And even during that time, the sites were not allowed to have any obstructions, which included things like benches and other types of seatings were considered obstructions. And so then in the early 70s, there were studies done realizing that some of these open spaces were not being used very well. And so that had them revamping the rules in 75 and kind of completely relooking at what amenities were required in these spaces. And so that's when they introduced requirements around trees and seating and different things for these open spaces. But a lot of them weren't really specifically specified. So in the early 2000s, they did another study and looked at the most successful spaces, and then again created more detailed rules around what were required at the sites. And so right now, if any site is renovated that was made before 2007, they have to bring their space up to code with all of the most recent regulations, which was an important thing to learn, so understanding the process of kind of where it's key to intervene. So the goal of the study, as I mentioned earlier, is to look at recently renovated sites to understand the process behind why they were renovated, talking with building owners, talking with community members, and then assessing what the benefit is to the community, so that the board can think about how to maybe replicate this process. What are the mechanisms to encourage other buildings to renovate their sites? And this is 780 3rd Avenue that we were just talking about. So on the left is before it was renovated. So I believe this site was made sometime in the late 70s. I don't remember exactly right now, but so it was after amenities required, like seating, but you can see it's still, with the updates, there's a lot more trees and green space. There's also new lighting there and new types of seating. So this will be one of the areas for study, since that was finished in the past few years. And still deciding on a few other sites right now. And so the timeline will be kind of monthly check-ins with the board to have updates on progress, looking at March for really culminating the insights on what's happening, with a final presentation in April. So I'll be doing the bulk of the research over the next 2 months, with through conversations, on-site observations, and discussions with people on site. And so that's all I have for you today, just kind of introducing the project and my work. And so I'd love to hear if there are any questions from you. I also invite any community members that are still on that feel passionately about this to reach out to me over email. And if you have any sites that have been recently renovated that people have really experienced the change, whether that's positive or negative, not construction.
Thank you. So we actually have still 30 people online who are very interested. Okay, I see Jim, you had your hand up, then Sandy and Larry. Go ahead, Jim.
Hi, and welcome. Thanks very much. You guys always do a wonderful job. And I'm sure you will do as well. Two things. First, there is a site on Lexington Avenue. It wasn't a POPs per se, it was an entirely covered space that the board opined on several months ago. You may want to look into that one. It's not called a plaza, I forget the technical term for it. But it had some discussion among the board. The second thing I think you might want to consider is, and perhaps even proposing as part of your research, distinctions between POPs of commercial buildings versus POPs of residential buildings. I was at a precinct council meeting of community of precinct 13 about 4 months ago, I guess. And some of the neighbors in a neighboring community district, I think community district 5, were quite upset at how a residential POPs was being abused and how it had a detrimental effect on their community. The problem basically is that the New York City parks, as you know, close at dusk or later, midnight. I don't really know the closing time, but the POPs have no closing time. They're basically to be open 24/7, and as a consequence, the people who live in the buildings or who are neighbors to those buildings have to suffer the consequences of loud music, loud talking, gathering, drinking, dope smoking, etc., etc. So that's just a thought you might want to consider as part of your survey.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Jim, I just want to point out that that's not actually true. Quite a few POPs are enclosed and do have closing times. That's one of the problems. They close them and they don't open them again at the appropriate times. Do you have certain sites that you're interested in?
According to the police, a number of the POPs in residential buildings are open, and they say that there's nothing that they can do to move the.
I mean, maybe
I think the default regulation is that they should be 24 hours, and then some of them can apply for limited hours. So I don't think it's or it's a minority that have limited hours.
So is there one maybe that are there ones that you're looking at that you're considering that you'd like feedback on?
Yes, that's a good question. Let me find my list. So I think part of, as I was looking through the data, some of them that have been renovated, it was done in like 2011 or 2013. So those just feel like they might be more difficult to kind of understand some of the process behind what happened there. I was seeing that 201 East 42nd Street seems like it was recently renovated. Forgetting I don't have internet. Would you mind bring that up, Brandon?
Bring up 201 East 42nd Street?
Yes, please.
Okay, just give me a moment.
And actually, while Brandon is pulling this up, I'll just acknowledge Letty has done a good amount of work on this issue back in 2015. I believe we've shared the materials, and also Murray Hill Association, Norm, Carol, also, active committee members who have looked at this and expressed interest in supporting this effort as well.
Okay, this is 201 East 42nd Street.
It's that little corner.
I know exactly that location.
They came to us as well. So it's one that the board.
That this board is.
Did, yes. They approached us. They took out the trees.
I see. Yeah. I believe they previously didn't have seating, if I remember correctly, when I was looking at it.
There are different types.
Yeah.
On the other corner.
There are different type of pubs, the ones that are open like that and the ones that are closed in the beach.
It's why they're building.
So those are the 24/7, because
Right.
that does not close, yeah.
Yeah, so that's for
Yeah.
gym too. Clarify.
Is there a closed one maybe that? Or a residential one, just to get it?
The one that we saw in Madison that he's talking about, in Lexington, I mean.
281 Lexington?
It's not a Pops.
That's not a pub, that's just a abandoned empty space under the building.
It's an arcade.
Oh, that's. But
Or I
the-
know arcades are fall under the POPs program, if it is a POPs that was done under.
Well, actually, there's a Pops, it's a residential Pops as well as an arcade, so maybe that's.
Yeah, that's a good case
281
study.
Lexington.
Yeah, because that can be by programming, it can be activated, I think.
So that's an example of an underutilized site, not one that has been renovated.
Yes.
But they did mention they are planning on renovating, so they might be a good one to
Okay.
talk to about what stimulates that kind of
Yes,
change.
definitely. Because what they show us was
Or,
great.
sorry to. Go ahead.
Go there.
Welcome aboard, Missy.
Nice.
I can see you're enthusiastic about this, and that's wonderful. Are you familiar with the body of work of William Holly White, Project for Public Spaces?
I'm almost done reading I can't remember the title of it now, but the work that he did that led to the changes in the policy in 75.
He is an inspiration for me too. And his comment that observation is key really needs to further guide this discussion. He studied how humans behave in built settings, and he filmed them and did time-lapse photography. And so what you're looking at right here, which is still is suggestive of what we get out of observation. You see a man sitting on a bench there. Well, that's great. You built a bench, but it invited someone to use it. And we often have examples in our POPs of very hostile environments, maybe deliberately so. And where people put spikes to prevent people from sitting, for example. And so trying to encourage good behavior and a welcoming setting, I think aspirationally is where I think we'd like to head. At least personally, that's what I would like to see.
What's the name of that?
I'll share.
Okay.
It's William White, Project for Public Spaces.
Okay, I'm pretty sure there's a lot more to say about this, but thank you for the introduction. Thank you for showing up.
Thank you,
And,
Lee.
Rich is supporting, Rich serving as a point of contact for our committee. So also feel free to copy him on all thoughts on this issue. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, next, Sabah Mahmood.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really honored to be part of tonight. And so I'm Sabah. I'm from Pakistan. I have my background in architecture and I practice in my country as an interior and architecture designer. And belonging to a country which has faced vulnerabilities to natural and political crisis, I was always curious to learn more on how to design better and design more for vulnerabilities. And this passion was reinforced when I practiced architecture, when I understood the impact that it could create and how wonderful it would be to employ policies beforehand which meet community needs, so that, you know, the end design can be more impactful and we can be well prepared for the future that way as well. So again, happy to be here.
Brendan, can we please pull up the doc?
Pull up the presentation. So I want to take the opportunity tonight to share what the project is about, my current findings, which are still in process. And of course, your guidance on how to move forward with what I have collected. Just a heads up, a lot of information which is put up there, especially when I talk about opportunities where resilient strategies could be implemented. Of course, you are at a better position what the fate of those spaces could be, because many of them could be under process of a new project, or so please excuse me if there's any discrepancy or if there's any information that conflicts with a current plan which the board is thinking of. So our project is really to improve the overall resiliency of the district. And the presentation, it covers the project goal, current resiliency challenges, ongoing projects that are aimed to improve resiliency in the district, current opportunities which can be optimized, and the way forward. So as the title said, that our board really aims to develop solutions, both physical, non-physical, green and small scale interventions to improve overall resiliency of the district. Building on previous reports, data available online, and meetings with the board members, we can condense our challenges into three major categories: coastal flooding, which is obvious, we're at the waterfront; stormwater flooding because of excessive rain; and heat due to lack of open and green spaces. So this map shows with the current sea level rise, the floodplain, and as you can see, much of the southern part of our district towards the First Avenue is under the floodplain, and this extends from where our district begins, from Street 14 to Street 41, even beyond that. But if you look at the map, you can clearly see that it's pretty evident till 14 to 41. And then this map shows the future projection of 2020 sea level rise. And as we see, the floodplain extends more towards the Second Avenue.
This is a terrifying map.
I really don't want to scare anybody, and I was actually designing this presentation. I was like, how should I begin? Because I don't want to scare anybody. Yeah,
We've already had our superstorm, don't be worried.
Our sentiment. That's why we're here for, so that doesn't.
Exactly.
So this map shows the potential areas of flooding due to excessive rain, which is happening more frequently due to the climate change. We see these blue areas, which are the potential spaces with current sea levels. And when we move to 2050, we see like more areas. One area on the East 34th Street next to the waterfront is evident. And then down south, we see where our district touches CB3, there is increase in that potential space for stormwater flooding. So regarding heat, this map shows the temperature deviation from the mean temperature from the city. And luckily, we do not have very extreme temperatures as we compare it to, if you compare to the surrounding area. Looking at this map, it is also evident that the areas near the waterfront are relatively cooler as well. However, when you see it at a macro scale, we can definitely assume that the northern part of the district, which is near a major park space, the Central Park, it is relatively cooler. And as we go down southern to our district, becomes relatively warmer. It is evident that there are not major, large green spaces in the town where our district is. So yeah, this calls for more open and green spaces. So yes. Okay. Yeah.
Can you move the top bar as well?
These Zoom bars are.
Oh, yes.
Okay, let me.
We need solar.
Thank you, bartender.
Hopefully this one still works. It's when I move these things that the clicker starts having issues.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some ongoing projects which are helping with resiliency. The major one is the East Side Coast Resiliency Project. Don't want to sound repetitive. I know this has been discussed many times, but our district majorly lies in the project area 2 of the ESCR project. And which is on the east 15 to the east 25th. But as you can see on this map, with the current sea level rise, our floodplain does lie till up to the 41st Street, not just the 25th. And within the project, there's also improvements to our inland drainage within the East 20th and East 23rd area. And learning from the last meeting, which I saw on YouTube, is that there has been a commitment to also install green infrastructure, trees and biospheres in the district. Further finding more data, we do have some DAP green infrastructure in our district in the form of roof gardens in the NYU institution. I think there's permeable pavers in the certain case, and down there we also have like a rain garden in the district. I wanted to show this map as well. This map basically shows the capital projects, which is we can find online from the DCP data. And these are like 68 projects. These points show 68 projects which have been developed and are to be developed from 2010 to 2032. And it is interesting to note that these projects that are either developed or in current development, if they are incorporating any resilience strategies, because within how our current challenges are evolving, it would be important for the board to know whether or not they are being incorporated, any resilience strategies which could help mitigate any future adverse effects. So moving forward, however, we should be hopeful because we do have opportunities in our district which can perhaps be used to implement green infrastructure, which I'm currently researching on. We do have public access to some waterfront area, which is the magenta color shows, which is publicly owned, the frozy color shows, which is privately owned. So we also have existing parks in our district. We have some existing open spaces. We also have some existing vacant lots, and moving forward, it's all about how to be smart enough to incorporate solutions which are resilient, which can perhaps be accessible to the community, can be green, and we can like optimize their availability. Moving forward, this can seem very complicated, but just layering the vulnerabilities with our opportunities and just trying to highlight where we can implement green solutions. So alongside this, I'm also researching on green solutions and moving forward, like I'm currently in stage 2 where I see myself really engaging with the board members to understand and have more information on these opportunities and layering them with ongoing international research where there have been interventions that have been incorporated and are working well with cities elsewhere in the world as well. So this is what I have for today, and thank you again so much.
So
for
would
your
you
time.
mind going back to the slide that showed the parks?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I was just curious whether, the Stuyvesant Town Park, is that supposed to be Murphy's Brothers Playground?
That's what I think it is, yeah. Yes.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Stuyvesant Town's kind of green. I mean, technically,
But the oval is technically not a park.
yeah, but it is.
Yeah, okay.
On its open space. I mean,
We have Stuyvesant Cove Park,
Yeah.
which is just opened.
Okay, thank you.
Right, questions, go ahead.
So terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know we're gonna touch base offline. I have a quick question about the 68 capital projects. You said there are capital projects that already contain resiliency
No.
measures?
So I have with all these legends that you say, I have Excel sheets of this which specify the addresses and the projects. And the 68 are, some are built and some are not built. I was just going through the Excel sheets. Many of them are from the DPR, some of them the DDC. And I was just curious to have further discussions on if you're aware of any resilience strategies that are being incorporated in them. We can also put the layer of future vulnerabilities, and we can talk to the teams that, hey, this is the future, so how is it gonna happen? Or yes, but again, I feel at a point where I haven't really shown any strategies which could be implemented. I feel if I also have that in hand, we'll be in a better position to sort of advocate for that as well.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So I guess the way forward is we'll find out what, if any, is already being employed, which we have to assume that where, given the location, there will be some. And then sort of thematically catalog them and then build off those to make recommendations.
Yeah, but that is, yes, of course, regarding to the capital projects. Because, you know, with the changing environments, it's also important that whatever is being constructed that employs some way or the other, any solutions that can help. Otherwise, like I displayed the opportunities, how about if there are any smart solutions, small interventions that can be quickly employed, which can help mitigate any adverse effects.
Yeah, and just to also piggyback on that, it's worth understanding what other techniques the city is employing elsewhere. I know there's a lot of talk about bioswales. I don't think we're getting any inside our district. We're getting it just outside. There are a lot of techniques the city actually is somewhat leading, but in leading as far as like this part of the world, not other parts. So yeah, it's worth also comparing just to understand the discrepancy, how much we're lagging behind. Now that we understand the vulnerability.
However, I feel that with this green infrastructure, there's also going to be more analysis because there's going to be a sunlight analysis, there's going to be a water table analysis. So there's that is also going to come with the research so that we can actually employ something on ground. So it is going to be a lot of layers and a lot of discussions.
Yeah.
Okay, a suggestion. Our resiliency projects, which are either currently underway or have recently been completed, could be discussed at perhaps greater length, and including what the pros of those approaches are, and maybe the drawbacks as well, and perhaps vulnerabilities which they present. For example, ESCR, which incorporates movable gates. They allow access to the waterfront, but if those gates can't be properly deployed and quickly, they're as good as nothing. And moving forward, we heard today about some planning for some additional resiliency projects, connection with Spark and the Gibbs Bay Bellevue corridor, which takes you partway up to 41st Street.
And I was just thinking, we actually do have a new green space coming up, the where the NYU parking is at the end of 34th Street. And I mean, it is on the waterfront, and it is going to change from being parking into parkland.
Oh, we looked at it.
Yes. You took, I mean, Majed and I are architects too, so we always want to design something. That might be a good spot to just take a look at some of the things that you find, how they could be incorporated.
I think that's a great way forward.
Yeah.
Actually, that could be a case study and also see, I mean, if you already have a space to do that.
It's right now, it's just parking, like there's no, it's very, very conceptual what's going to happen. So it would be, if we could tie in some of our community goals and concerns and resiliency that's worked elsewhere that we know about.
Where is it located?
It's
Do you know where the ferry dock is?
Mm-hmm.
It's just south of there.
Yes. It has
Near the heliport.
Right by the 34th.
multi-level parking structure. And you park 3 cars.
I see.
And
that
is there
never see the
any
old-
intervention that the board suggests at that space?
Well, maybe, we don't know yet. I mean, it's not, it hasn't been given up yet, but it will be soon. So, and it's something that the board's been working on for a long time to make it public space, so.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
All right, seeing no comments online, Gabe is, thank you, Gabe, serving as point of contact, also supporting Saba. So if you have any resources, comments, questions, please keep him in the loop. Thank you again. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, we're at the end of a very long meeting, but thank you all for sticking around. I'm waiting chair's report, nothing that you haven't heard to share. So old or new business, anybody? Nothing to share.
I just want to make a comment that with all these new projects, the Spark and the Innovation Center, we're gonna have a lot of massing in our neighborhood, a lot of big buildings. It's gonna change the character.
Right,
Just making the comment.
a lot of glass
Just
boxes
saying.
coming in.
Mhm.
Well, hopefully, through the Europe actions, we can, through the process, we can try to
Control.
make these as community friendly as possible. Yeah. Exactly.
Is it the Esper meeting? Did you go to the Esper meeting? Was it this week coming? Or is it this? Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, any other, go ahead,
Motion to adjourn?
right?